Ozzy knows I'm about to go for a ride, so he's waiting for his dog treats. Well, you guys, I want to take you down Pacific Avenue in San Pedro. And the best analogy I heard for this part of town is it reminds me of old Santa Monica. Santa Monica from like the 70s. So you're going to be going down Pacific Avenue with me. And then I found this really, really neat kind of rustic canyon on 5th Avenue. So then we're going to turn up 5th Avenue. And you're going to see it. It's pretty cool. All right. So I'm going to put the helmet on. Get the dog treats. Don't mind my neighbor. She has a chronic coughing problem. And it's from smoking huge bong loads all day long, and she loves to cough really, really loud. So you might just hear that, but it's no big deal. It's just a chronic pot smoker that loves to let the whole neighborhood know what she's doing. Anyways, you guys, here we go. Got the dog treats. Ozzy knows what to do. Go. Down. Good boy. Okay, you guys, so I want to take you to, I told you where I'm taking you, but what I'm going to talk about on a voiceover as we're going is what caused you to get into motorcycles. All right. Look at Mother Nature told me it's time to clean my bike. Isn't Mother Nature wonderful? Let you know when it's time. I just watched an episode. I just watched an episode of my favorite show, Breaking Bad. I had a big bag of Fritos and a Coors Light. So I'm in a good mood. Let's get this going. So I mentioned Breaking Bad, and I love the character that Bryan Cranston plays, which is Walter White. I was lucky enough to meet Bryan Cranston at the Rock Store, the most iconic, famous motorcycle gathering place here in Southern California, which is up in the Malibu Mountains. And, you know, I really have an affinity with him. He loves Dodgers, he loves baseball, he loves Vin Scully. I love all those things. And he loves motorcycles. And according to him, he kind of grew up in a dysfunctional family, which I kind of relate to. But the guy is funny. I fell in love with him in Malcolm in the Middle, this half-an-hour sitcom series. And then he got into Breaking Bad, and oh my God, I just love that series so much. So, anyways, talking about what got us into motorcycles. So, you know, way back, when I was 3, I had a cousin, Chris Heiser, that was ranked very, very highly in motocross. So as a little 3 and 4-year-old, my mother would drop me off with that side of the family. And every weekend they'd be going to these motocross events, and Chris Heiser would be tearing it up. So I would kind of just be let loose, and I would go off on my own as like a little 3 and 4-year-old and play in the dirt. But the whole time I was hearing the sound of the engines and seeing these guys going flying 12 feet through the air, 15 feet through the air, and it just looked like poetry in motion to me. So, and the smell of the exhaust, and so all of that stuff just kind of sinks. You're so impressionable at that age. All that stuff just kind of sinks into your veins. I think that's a lot of the reason why I fell in love with baseball too, because when I was 4, my brother started Little League, and my dad was the coach. So I'd go with them, but I wasn't really part of the activities. So once again, I'd just kind of bust loose on my own and play in the dirt. But, you know, you'd hear the sound of the announcers, the sound of the crack of the bat, you'd smell the grass, and it just, you know, you're so young and impressionable, and it just sinks into your veins. So that's my reason why I fell in love with baseball, and I fell in love with motorcycles. I don't know if any of you guys ever heard about me telling the story about being 3 years old and my dad pulling into this liquor store in Santa Monica on Wilshire Boulevard, and there was this little yellow mini bike in the front window, and he'd go in to buy his beer or liquor, and I'd be sitting there in the passenger seat staring at this mini bike. And I told him I loved that bike and I'd like it for Christmas, and I think it was probably about the 3rd time that I started crying, saying how much I want that motorcycle as a little, like, 3-year-old. So there was that motocross, and then that mini bike, and then as like you know, I wanted to always progress to the next level as fast as possible. So I wanted to have my own transportation. So at like 15, I thought about getting a moped, because you're allowed to get a moped, at least back in those days in Southern California, when you turn 15. So that's a whole year before you're allowed to drive a car. So like I got a work permit early when I was only 15 and a half from my high school, and I got my first job when I was 15 and a half. And so I always wanted to get to that next level as fast as possible. So like I got that motorcycle license when I was only 16, and so where was I going? Oh, let's see. What influenced me? Okay, so talking about the mini bike, and then wanting the mopeds, and then I thought about that didn't go over well with my parents, so I thought about trying to get an enduro, and that didn't go over very well. And then I actually found 3 different street bikes, and got went and visited the people, and I had my own money from my job, and everything was copacetic. And then when I would share it with my parents, they said no, each and every time. So I said, 3 strikes, you're out. I'm buying my next motorcycle that I find, regardless. So at almost 17, like 16 and 5/8, I guess, or 3/4, whatever, I found this 550 Honda Super Sport 1976, and had my $500 ready to go, and went up there with my brother, test drove it, and bought it. And I had to keep it a secret though, so I kept it in this girl, Samantha, that lived down the street from me and around the corner on a street that my parents almost never used. No one almost used the street. So I would keep it in her garage. I had an old beat up Jeep, which I bought off my uncle for $2,500, and I would pull the Jeep into her parking lot. I had the key to her garage. I'd get on that motorcycle and drive the motorcycle through this bitchin' canyon, Beverly Glen, to go to high school. And then in the afternoon, I would do the exact opposite. I'd pull the bike in the garage, get back in my Jeep, and drive home. So that was just a wonderful experience that I dreamed about for like a year, and I was so happy that I was able to bring that into fruition and make that little fantasy happen of driving a motorcycle to high school. But what really influenced me, you know, so it was that motocross and then that mini bike, but then getting into, you know, rockabilly, and Marlon Brando had a Harley, and Elvis Presley had a Harley, and I was into all these icons from the 50s. James Dean had a Triumph Bonneville, and so I wanted that next fulfill that little image, that idea. So here we come up to this little canyon here that I was talking about. And so I had the full-on biker jacket, the greased hair, and the Doc Marten boots, and the rolled-up jeans. Okay, I'm going to let myself talk here for a little bit. So what I like is right here in the middle of the city, you have this little kind of rustic canyon with this cute little bridge. And you'll see up here as I turn left and circle up right, it's kind of the same feeling. So part of the reason I thought about this idea is Shade Tree Surgeon has an old video where he talks about this female cartoon character. He's kind of from a different generation than I am, so I don't even know who this character is. But it was this female cartoon character that I think was like kind of like a Japanese type of cartoon character that was like kind of like almost a superhero. She got in a lot of fights and adventures, and that was one of the first things that influenced him. So we all have our influences, whatever caused us to get into it. It could be just, you know, noticing them as a kid and falling in love with the sound and the shiny fenders and whatnot. But so I had that rockabilly scene, and that really was cool to me. It really fit in with motorcycles to me. And the rest was kind of history. So that's what caused me to get into motorcycles. Now, what's really cool is I'm going to a destination, and when I get there, I end up, when I come out of the place, I end up seeing basically the exact same year, same color, same brand, same model. So it was kind of like deja vu. I like did a double take. It's like, wait, where did I park? So, but there's a few little things that were different, which is kind of strange for it to be the exact same bike, same year. There was still some slight differences, stock differences. But I ended up meeting, there was a sport bike guy that just had to sell his fat bob because he got divorced and he needed the money, and ended up getting a Yamaha sport bike instead. So then the guy that owns the while we're talking, the owner of the Yamaha, because he wanted to kind of show me pictures of his cool old Harley fat bob, and it was cool. It had the bobber look, it had white wall tires and stuff, but it was kind of a gray color, very, very good looking. But he had to get rid of it, and so he got onto something more affordable. Kind of what I was talking about the other day about Metro Cruisers, you know. It's just nice to have those Japanese bikes to fall back on if money's an issue. Anyways, we're talking, and then the owner of the 2016 Softail Slim comes out, and the three of us ended up talking for like 15 minutes. But that guy's name is Richard, and he's a really nice guy from Kentucky, and we ended up exchanging phone numbers. And get this, he even has the same helmet I have, a red showy helmet, my full face. I wasn't wearing it at the time. And he also has the stock seat on there, which I didn't have on at the time. I had my Mustang seat on there. But it's just kind of cool to see, you know, motorcycles owners, we all have so much in common, you know, regardless of what we ride. And I just love that fraternity and that brotherhood amongst us. You know, that's why I kind of made that one video about, you know, waving, about how I think it's, you know, so much more appropriate when someone acknowledges your presence and then goes about giving you a kind gesture as a wave. Because they're doing those two things. One, they're acknowledging your presence, something that cagers frequently don't do. So they're acknowledging your presence, one, and two, they're giving you a kind gesture. So to ignore both of those because you think you have a better bike or because you want to look cooler or appear cooler to that other individual is kind of the opposite of humility, which is arrogance. And I really, really try to aim towards humility in life and avoid arrogance. So that's kind of why I made that one video a long time ago, like 9 months ago now. Like I think it was called Shade Tree Surgeon versus Chuck Gines and Motorcycle Wave. But we're going down Western right now, which is a really fun street to drive. So we started on Pacific, which is kind of like the old downtown part of San Pedro. And then we went down that cool little rustic canyon on 5th. And then we are going down this Western, which kind of is a curvy street, even though it's kind of like, you know, you got 2 lanes on one side, 2 lanes on the other, and it's got pretty high traveling space. Now look at that guy. See, I don't know if you guys noticed this guy before, but he was all upset. He was like wanting to race me. That guy in that white sedan. Motorcycle jealousy, motorcycle envy. You know, I was just riding next to him. He fully glanced at me and looked at me, and then all of a sudden he starts getting really racy. You know, like coming up really close behind the car in front of him, like he didn't want me to cut in front of him, and then he turns right here. But that was kind of strange. Every now and then you get that. And then I met that guy Rich, the guy of the 2016, and he starts talking about that, about how you get people that get so aggressive in their cars when they're around you, and he doesn't understand. And I mentioned, I think it's motorcycle envy. So, tell me, you guys, what first caught your interest with a motorcycle? If you can remember back, I got a good long-term memory. So if you can think like I did and remember all the way back to age 3 or 4, or maybe it was, you know, teenage years, but something first ignited that interest, which evolved into love. You know, the love might have transpired after the ownership of a motorcycle, or it might have happened before the ownership of a motorcycle. But what influenced it? I mean, I never would have thought that Shade Tree Surgeon, it would have been.
So I just got done talking to the gentleman that owns this 2016 red Softail Slim. It's basically my bike, but it's amazing. It's kind of weird that it has a different connection for the air filter cover to the engine, and it has this 6-speed here looks a little different. So it's got, even though it's the same year, same bike, it's got a few little differences. But it's funny because he's got a red showy helmet, just like I have. But he's got Screaming Eagle slip-on exhaust, no sides, swing arm side saddlebag. He still has the heel shifter like I do. He kept his front reflectors. He removed the back, and he's got highway lights. That's about the only difference.
They're clean, man.
Cool.
Adios.